Hello, folks, and welcome to the October 2nd, 2023 Board of Selectmen meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, declare that we have a quorum, and let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. There is a conflict of interest, please disclose it. Joe, it looks like there is some intention to move the agenda around to accommodate some people rather than hold out for their position on the agenda.
That would be my recommendation, Madam Chair. Andrew Grace is here from IEC and Kathy Gerard is here. As a part of the town.
Okay, so let's do so. Andrew, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Joe asked me to come and speak on the heat pumps that we're proposing installing in the town garage. I don't know if you've seen the estimate or not. I have about it's one copy of it tonight, but we're proposing 4 36,000 BTU units in the truck garage, 1 36,000 BTU unit for the mechanic, and then a multi-zone unit, 112 for the parts room, 6,000 for the break room, and another 12,000 for office spaces. These do not, Joe and I talked about this, these do not qualify currently right now for any efficiency main rebates because of the size. There's 5 3-ton units that we need. It's a big, really big space. To make them qualify, this is something that length Joe and I talked about. To make them qualify, you would be, I did the math right, 15, 12 K units. It's just ridiculous. It would be 15 outdoor units all along the back of that building to get any type of figure. My understanding that you don't necessarily need a rebate to be awarded the grant. So those are your options. We could certainly do an estimate for those units, but the amount of money you're going to spend for the extra equipment to get a rebate is probably going to cost you more than what you get for a rebate. So that's probably the biggest concern I think that we have about the whole thing.
And Madam Chair, when I checked with Zach, who was our liaison at APCON, when we put the grant application together, we didn't specify that these would be
Correct.
Suitable for efficiency made rebates. We just listed the equipment that we were requesting, and they received that in that way, and initially approved us knowing the equipment that was listed. But
it's not that they're bad units. They're Mitsubishi units. They're the P series, which is the commercial series. Quite frankly, they're the best unit you can buy for this application. It's just because they're 3 tons per 1-to-1. So they're just not, they don't meet the efficiency level that efficiency main wants per 1-to-1. They're really strict with this. I do tons of residential and homes with these heat pumps, and probably 60% of the time I can't get rebates for people in their own homes because of the sizes. If you're trying to heat your whole home, that's what we're trying to do with the garage, is heat the entire garage, almost exclusively the entire winter. So they need to be big, robust units. These are rated to -13. They will work below -13, but Mitsubishi doesn't give me any specs for what they'll put out below that. And you guys have a working heating system there that you could certainly use once it got that cold. You'd want to once it got that cold. So, but that's, yeah, over 3/4 of the winter is above that temperature typically. So,
Andrew, can you talk a little bit about the efficiency of these units in the shoulder season? So they really become inefficient when it's 0 or below 0.
correct.
November, October, November, December, and then in spring months,
Yeah,
they're super.
they're fantastic. Yes, they have a coefficient of efficiency on these. The CO is like over 300% there, which means they're over 300% efficient. You have electric baseboard that's 100% efficient, no matter what the temperature is outside. The way electric baseboard works is the electricity put in is 100% the electricity put out. These are over 300%. So you gain, they're that much more efficient in that type of weather. I typically tell people, like Joe and I spoke, down around 10 degrees, you're gonna save a lot of money over oil. I don't have hard numbers for you. You'd have to do an analysis to figure out what your oil consumption is and to get exact numbers. But you're gonna save immensely as long as the weather's 10 degrees or lower.
Is there any comparison to propane or?
I didn't really do, because I was asked directly for heat pumps, so I didn't do any type of analysis or anything like that. You could do propane, the savings aren't gonna, it'll be better savings than oil, but not as much as with heat pumps, as long as the weather is, like I said, 10 degrees or warmer, you're gonna get more efficiency out of these.
What they have them in and out?
You're not,
Oops, sorry.
yeah, no, your warm air right now with oil, or warm air furnaces with oil. You have to stay in warm air with gas, so your efficiencies are better than oil with warm air, but it's not fantastic. You're probably talking oil units are usually these, I don't know, I didn't look on them, but typically they're 80 to 85% efficient. Propane might be something that big, might be low 90s, so it's not a huge jump where, you know, heat pumps are way more efficient.
Have you installed these in any other municipalities in this type of a?
Nothing quite this big. I have several homes up to Sugarloaf. We primarily do a lot of work in Sugarloaf, and we've got entire homes that we heat with these, obviously smaller units, but 3,000-4,000 square foot homes that are heating with them, and are very happy. I've got one house in particular that heats the entire winter with them. And that's why we went with the professional series, the commercial series with these, because that's the scope of the work here is. And so the warranties are really good, and they're designed for this application. They're designed for commercial applications. So we're not sticking a residential unit in a garage. It's commercial equipment. So, yep. You will need a service upgrade, which is in that estimate as well. Your power capabilities won't supply what we're doing right now. So that was included in that. So.
Wendy.
Madam Chair, thank you. What is the square footage of the space that we're heating? Do you know?
I don't remember. I don't have that with me.
It's around 4,000, I believe.
So 4,000 square
Maybe
feet?
45.
I
And if you're-
think it's more than that. Counting.
Did you say 40?
40,000.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Yes,
I was gonna
yeah. It's huge.
Hold the
Yes,
buttons.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
Um,
massive.
and
Something like, I don't.
It's 40 by 120, so 4,000, 4,500, something like that. 40.
40, okay.
Yes.
And the heat pump, the internal portion of the heat pump structure, if you will, I know that garages are usually pretty tall. Are they accessible for someone to actually clean the filter on a regular basis? Because it being a garage, I
Correct.
know that they're in restaurants and they get destroyed with, oil laden vapors and so forth.
Yes. I haven't ironed out all the really fine details of exactly where they're gonna go on all. We know rough locations. They're probably gonna need a ladder to access the filters.
And those should be cleaned once a month.
Yeah, especially in that situation, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
So-
does the price of the proposal include maintenance, the annual maintenance on the machines?
It doesn't, no, that would be like the first year, we would come out and do stuff, clean filters and just check and test equipment like that, and there would be no charge for that, but not nothing years down the road.
And are they all tied into the same mechanism? And I know that you had a split. And
Yeah,
usually those thermostats have to be exactly at the same temperature for them to work properly.
these are P series, so we're gonna be able to do, I'm proposing to do a P series wall thermostat. So in the main, I don't get my terminology right, but in the main garage, where we're doing the four 3-ton units, I'll have one thermostat that ties them all together.
Okay,
So they run simultaneously, and yes, yeah. And then the other areas, because that area has the 4 3-ton units, you've got a separate 3-ton unit just for the mechanics bay. And then the office spaces will have a multi-zone unit with 3 separate heads in those office spaces.
What's the price of just one 3-ton unit?
I don't have it broken out. I could get you that pretty easily. I just don't have it with me tonight, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
I
okay.
can get it,
Just
yeah.
asking,
I can
thank
get
you.
it, yes, yep.
Any additional questions from the board? Any from the public?
How long will it take to recover once you open the overhead doors? How long before the building walls back up again?
I'm, with these units, they're sized adequately, and we've done a full heat loss analysis on the whole building. So they're sized adequately with the building, with the doors closed normally, and they'll recover and do fine in all the way down to like -13. If there may be times, if you flip open these doors and leave them open for a long time, that you may want to kick on the oil furnaces if you're looking for quick recovery like that. They will take longer than an oil furnace. But we're matching the BTUs of what you have in there now, very close, so it should be close. That's a kind of a loaded question, because it's, what's the temperature outside? That's the difference with heat pumps, is it doesn't matter what the temperature is outside with your oil furnace, it's designed to put out whatever the total BTUs, it's close to what we're doing here, so it's designed to put that out whatever the temperature is. If you're 20-degree, 30-degree weather, they're gonna do it pretty fast. They'll be very close to what the oil furnace would do. So it's hard with heat pumps. It's not apples to apples with fossil fuel systems. But we're matching the load so that when you're down to that -13, they're designed at -13 to adequately heat the building.
I have one more. I know that we must have an exhaust fan in the garage for fumes. Have you done a negative air analysis of that space with the heat pumps?
I haven't done anything like that, no.
Thank you.
You mentioned they wouldn't recover, they don't work like a fossil fuel system. Could you quickly explain what a heat pump actually does, just so the public can understand?
Yeah. A heat pump is an air conditioner in reverse, is the most basic way to state it. It uses refrigeration, and it runs in reverse of what an air conditioner would do, and it extracts heat from the outside air, transfers it to the evaporator inside, and then blows the air across that coil, and it's pulling the heat back out of the coil and blowing it into the space. If that makes sense. It's a really simple way to state it. There's a lot more that goes on, but yeah.
Okay.
So, and they are air conditioners too. These are the hyper heat heat pump models. So they're the best in the P series we can get as far as efficiencies in the commercial series, and they do air conditioning as well. So I don't know that you want to, but in the summer you could cool a place too. So definitely for the office spaces it would work good. So.
Any further questions?
Just a quick one.
Yeah,
sorry.
go right ahead.
Any estimates on what the extra electrical cost would be to run these? For the
Yes, to run them?
Yeah.
I don't, like, there's all kinds of studies you have to do, and Efficiency Maine has a lot of numbers. If we wanted to dig into that, we could. I haven't done anything yet that way. I do know from experience, I've putting these in for 8 years now, at least. I know from experience, like we were saying, as long as the temperature is down around 10 degrees or warmer, you'll be very happy with your electric bill compared to what you're consuming in oil. And that oil would have to get really cheap to feel like you're spending more electricity than oil. I'm a selectman for the town of Strong where I live, and we've put them in there, and I'm in charge of the Foster building there, which is our town hall. And so I've been tracking the usage with our electric bill versus our fuel there. And I only had previous numbers from the year before oil prices had shot up this last winter, and we were still saving money. So.
I have one more question, and thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, do we have a generator at the garage?
We do.
And does it will it manage the heat pumps as well?
It will absolutely not. This is such a huge electrical load, yeah, that most places, this is one of the catches with heat pumps that you will run into, is if you're doing a very big space, most places aren't gonna be able to put a generator in big enough to run it. That's what the backup for would be with your oil furnaces. Those would be able to come on. You'd still be safe that way with the generator, because I'm pretty, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the generator runs those now.
Correct. The
So-
generator will run
Yeah.
the oil furnace.
So.
Thank you.
I think you're good, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Okay, hopefully that's some good information there.
Thank
If
you
we
so
got,
much.
like I said, I can do more, some analysis or studies if we really need to, or we can get a hold of efficiency Maine, but, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, so moving on to Kathy.
First off, thank you, and thank you, Joe, for fitting me in, so that's short notice. I'm Kathy Marti Gerard, a little background. I grew up here on this site, went to elementary school here, right down the road. So I've been here in Rangeley and committed to this area for a long time. I currently have a place down, I bought a place 9 years ago, down right between the condos and the Catholic Church, right down in town. So I've been renovating that, and so I've had a chance for the last 9 years to kind of look at what's going on in the park. The park has always been near and dear to me, because as a kid, that was where we went. That's where everybody went. Everybody had access to lakefront, so we could all go down, those of us that didn't live on the lake. So took swimming lessons down there, so I've been watching it, going around and kind of, as probably most of you have been, dismayed by the goose problem down there, and just watching how that has evolved. I've chased a good number of them off over the years in my hazmat suit, just thinking that somebody's gonna capture this on film, and then that'll get you. So, but anyway, it's been really disheartening, because as much as the effort's been put into it, cleaning up the goose poop, it's always back. So they come in, extract it, and 15 minutes later, kids are down on the ground in the hands. And I heard a lot from other people that live in Rangeley. They don't send their kids down to the park, because they're getting a duck itch, they're getting other things that are happening. And I know the town's been working really hard to address this problem over the years, and so I've been involved in that. Some things have worked, some things hasn't. And I think currently the extraction process that's being has worked, but they're back, and they'll, I think, always come back, and will always be a problem. So initially, as I was looking to ways to sort of attack this problem, it was what kind of surface is not attractive to a goose, think from a goose standpoint. So one of the things is uneven ground, so elements, well, there's long grassy there, so they have access up over the beach, they have access here, and in 10 minutes, they can excrete enough mess that goes through the whole, the whole park. So one of the things that I hit upon is that something we've been doing in Portland. My background is education, so I've been retired after 37 years as a school administrator and dealing with, in Portland Public Schools, we've been dealing with a lot of alternative things in our playgrounds equipment. And one of the things is called playscapes. So playscapes are natural barriers that you can put in that are environmentally and kid-friendly as far as play equipment. Kids love them, adults love them. They meet all age requirements, even adults have balancing things that you can make it attractive. But what it does in an environment like the park is fit naturally into the natural environment, and at the same time is a deterrent for the geese. So I've met with the park, I've met with the selectmen over the years, Joe and then John, and we've gone back and forth, and then it was recently that what was forwarded to me as I've watched the plans in the park unfold, was that this new piece of equipment that they wanted to, that was approved to come in really isn't along that same plan. So it's a large piece of equipment. There's some concerns about it, it's concerns about the placement where it is, access to people who use the handicap spots in front of my place. And I really watched how handicapped people are using the spot. A lot of times they can't go down the ramp because it's covered with goose poop. If they've got wheelchairs. The other thing is they sit oftentimes just to look out at the lake. They have lunch down there. they sit and use those spots all the time. That's just, that's how they use it. And so that's one thing that I noticed in the placement of this piece of equipment would be, it's gonna restrict access visibly as well as physically. So that was a concern. But I want to go back to playscapes as an option. So Joe, you got up the proposed option that's up there. And that's what was sent to me is the footprint to it. Where it's placed, I assume it's where I saw the stakes down there. And go to the next slide. Back a slide. There's the equipment with wood chips underneath. Wood chips in that kind of environment are oftentimes not recommended because they absorb moisture. We've always had a drainage problem down at the park, and when the goose poop gets in it, it's hard to extract. And then when you have seagull poop, it's also hard to extract from there. So when going in there to maintain that and extracting that underneath that as well to make that clean is going to be a challenge. So that's another thing that I've noticed about it. It is man-made materials, plastic, metal, and wood, some wood to it. That piece of equipment in particular has a slanted roof, but there's other spaces where seals will be around it. Plastics, more plastics there, which can, over time, wear down, and especially not conducive to older kids playing on it. Kids come down, they use the bumblebee, they get on the bumblebee, and they're going back and forth, and the other things that are down there. And so there's not a lot of things in places for middle school kids and high schools, and they like to congregate. They like to just sit around and talk, and there really isn't a place conducive down there for that. But anyway, let's move on. That's what's being proposed. Next one. All right, that's the footprint. And then an alternative that I've been proposing is, in addition to this, is a playscapes. They're called playscapes just because they fit into the environment, and they things that kids play on and adults play on and middle school kids play on, everybody likes them. And they're typically made of natural elements such as wood and stone that's natural to the environment that they're in. So I put some pictures in your presentation that I did, but let's go through them real quick. So playscape, Portland schools put in many of these at the elementary schools and some of the middle schools. Next one. And so the focus is on natural elements, and these are just some examples. The last presentation that I did in the chat is I did some actual pictures of ones that we had that we used, and the kids are pretty fond of, and I'm going to pass those around. I just have one copy because I gave all the other ones. So as you can see, it's a lot of stone, it's different elements, and there's some options there. Next one. Then there's some other things that you can do with wood, some natural walkways there, some logs that you can use and build into structures. And fits well into the landscape. Next one. And then little things that you can build. I added some things like you can carve things out of wood. You can, one of the little school bus things there was they took chairs, the tops of chairs, and integrated them so little kids can play school bus or bus driver. And then the last one again is an element where you can combine balance. And that's, as you can see from the gentleman up in the upper right, it's also good for adults. They can get down there for a walk-in, they can walk on stones, walk across boards, and it's all good. Next is one with tree limbs that you just use and put it out across. And again, it's about kids using their imagination when they go down to play. It's nothing set, it's just there, and the kids can create things as they go, but the elements are there, and again, they're for balancing, for walking, for jumping off, stepping on. Over here on the right, I put an example of what you can do for a walkway. You can use reclaimed wood and other things, and brick and other things to make it really interesting. And again, the interest is there for kids' imagination as you're building a walkway. One community built it so it kind of meandered along the waterfront. And again, just those stones the geese don't like stepping on that. So that's another deterrent. We used to have the rose bushes that went all along the front with us down to a small badge. but they don't like the uneven ground. So if you had something along that, easy to maintain, you can mow over it, you can use your weed whacker, so there's not a lot of maintenance to it. Next. So based on resources in use, you can design a plan. So that's sort of what I envisioned for the park, was to have a plan with these different elements and then involve the community. So we've done a lot of community building through Saddleback. My experience has been in different schools when we have projects. We work with the community and the stakeholders and give them an element and say, okay, the Rotarians, here you go. This is an element in the design. Can you take this on? The school, take this on. And I find that when kids, especially teenagers, when they're given that responsibility to maintain something that's part of their community, they will do an unbelievable job. Middle school kids will. Vandalism goes down, everything, because that's what it's part of what they do. Great, it fits into community and senior projects, which I spent a lot of time with kids building bridges and in Topsom with the Rotarians' help, and other things. So having a plan like that and taking the whole space, not just one element, but for the whole town space to have an integration landscape, if you will, that's attractive, that is user-friendly for all ages, and a big deterrent to geese. And you look at that whole spot, and you can, and it's amazing what you can do with some things. So the next one is, again, some more examples. Over on this one, they took logs and they put climbing things on it, so kids can climb up. So that's a natural thing. Fits in, they found a nice spot that was right abutting the trees, so the kids could climb up and it just fit right into the treescape that was there already. This other one was another branch that they just put out and put stepping stones, but that also, those stepping stones can be used as seats for outdoor classrooms. So if you have an outdoor class, kids can take them. When I was in school, they used to let us come down to the park and use the tennis courts for phys ed. So there's a lot of, I know, interaction in the community from the kids in school. This one over here is a small version on the lower right, is a small version of what you can do for the small kids. And then what you can also do for the bigger kids. So the elements can be interactive and you can have them specific for certain age groups. The one over on this side was just circles again, circles around a tree that was there. Again, it can be used as an outside classroom for kids to sit on while you're talking or while they're presenting. Next. And here's a few more, just simple, again, simple design and looking at the environment. I showed a picture of the tree there with the stone because, again, that's a nice finishing off element. Again, it breaks up the ground, but there's maintain the garden club, I know would be interested next there. It used to have some down there, but you're putting stones and again, you're breaking up those places where geese love to fly into, and it's attractive all around, and you can, again, integrate some more trees into the area while protecting them. Next is, again, these are kind of cool, where you took big logs and they just put them like, you know, and the kids love to climb on those. The one on the right I thought was very interesting. The stones right in the water. And I thought, what a great deterrent, number one. But number two, to put stones just under the surface there. So people can sit on those stones. Right now they go down. And they, at the same time, it's a beautiful integration of just the water as well as in a playscape. I remember as kids, we had big stones that went around, and the older you got, the more you could jump from one to one all the way around, so you knew you made it when you could make it to the certain one without killing yourself or screening with your knees. So anyway, here's another one with a dragonfly. Now that was a cute little thing that again is imaginative, and kids can sit on it, kids can climb on it, and it just incorporates just another element of the natural things that are down there. Kids see. Next. This is another one, a walkway, again, from place to place. Kids can balance, kids can run on, and that is something, an element that can be used all the way up through adults. And then another one, I just put in some benches that can be used, sort of made out of wood, depending on the environment, that can really break up a surface, but allow people to sit and congregate. over here, Joe will recognize that over there. I think it's just putting things in and how you, fit them in and what kind of construction you use. All right, hand doing, next. So, here's what I'd like to propose. The advantages of playscapes. Number one is the cost. Most of the times, communities get the materials donated. People got a pile of bricks, there's stones, there's lumber that's available. So a lot of time that cost is really reduced. And it can be also absorbed by fundraising by each group that takes an element. Number two, low maintenance. Once you put them in, you're talking about stones, logs, that kind of thing. Takes a weed whacker, not a lot of maintenance there. Natural resources. Again, you've got a beautiful park down there, integrating those natural resources that are around the region. Next, design by the stakeholders. That's a big thing. I think kids really need input in what they're doing. So I envision and would volunteer to bring stakeholders together to talk about it. And everybody designs it and come up with a plan, similar to a charrette, similar to the things that they did, our terrorists did for Saddleback, bringing people together to talk about it and have different stakeholders involved in it. So it truly becomes a community effort. Next, increases physical activity for all groups, all age groups benefit. We customize the plan for the space. It's not just trying to fit something in. It's the whole thing is designed and is customized. Volunteers are building it. That's everybody gets together. It becomes a collaborative process. And that I think is the true value, because one of the things that I'm hearing in the community is, and people are talking to me, is the feeling they weren't involved in this project. They feel like their voices aren't heard. I've talked to some people that bring in the playground. I had one, I felt so bad. She brought all the kids down to play on the play equipment. And they were looking at getting there, and the distance between there and there was just covered with goose poop. She said, I can't bring the kids down here. So what she had some great ideas about how to make that better. So at least she could bring the kids down, they could go swimming. So I think we need them to pay attention to that as a community, that people have a voice at the table. And I'd be willing to volunteer my time and expertise to take some time to do that over the winter and just say, let's build it. So what I'm asking is, can you pause on the piece that you're getting ready to install? Just pause on it, wait, it's not put in. We can address the issues around the ADA piece. We can address the issues with the others. How does it fit in? If you still want it, how can it fit into a bigger plan so it allows access for everybody who wants to use the property and is integrated into it? That cost that which is I assuming, based on my experience with playground equipment, is probably gonna run you $125,000. So that money, I don't know if you can return it after this, you decide, well, we really wanna go in a different direction, if that can happen. But once it's installed, you're really stuck with it, and that's what it is. But I think if we could just pause, even if you install it in October, it's only gonna be limited use through the winter. And then if we look at doing something in the spring, and if the fruition from the collaborative community hasn't, in the meetings have not proved fruitful, and everyone's saying, no, let's just just put it in. Okay, let's go back, we can go back. You still have it, we can put it back in, we might look at the location differently. But I think that at least the pause for a minute will at least allow people to think they have a voice and to see what that brings up when we talk about it as a group and what other options are here. So I'm willing to volunteer my time and start working with groups to see if we can do that.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for your input. I do want to make a couple of statements only because I'm a little concerned that you said people haven't felt like they've had a voice in this process. This process has been in place since 2012. I'm a little concerned that we're just now hearing in that long of a time span from them and from you. If this was a plan that you had previously put together, I really wish it would have been brought to the table sooner. That is just my opinion and my comments. Is there any further questions or comments from the board?
Can I address that?
Nope, bear with me just one moment. Any further questions or comments from the board?
As far as the materials that you're using, and I understand they're natural, I think it's beautiful. But I know that there's a company out of Ithaca, New York called Leathers and Associates, and I think Falmouth had that type of playground, and they actually had to take it down because the wood just broke down over time. I mean, certainly.
That was at the Plummer Mold School, I actually worked in Falmouth,
Okay,
so
yeah.
I know well aware of it, and that was in the way, in the design of it was
Mhm.
over time, it was a very long, complicated structure,
Right.
and so over time, that did fall down. What Playscapes is a little bit different is that you're using logs and strategically placed, there's no height to it, and there's no really any long-term maintenance, so it's a different type of structure, and different type of environment, so, yeah.
Thank you.
And I really want to speak to that because I presented both here at the selectmen's meeting, this plan all along. I presented to the park commission twice.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand that you feel passionate about it. I'm letting you know that this is the first I've seen it, and I've been on boards and committees for years now with the town. So I really wish this would have been presented earlier and not at the 9th hour of the phase. We've purchased the piece of equipment. We have been working on this since 2012 plus. So I would absolutely love to see what we can do. But the pause for the people who have been beating down our door saying you've been working on this since 2012, put up this piece of equipment, they're tired of the pause. They don't want us to pause anymore.
I think and the other people that I've talked with asked if they could come up and make some comments to the town and give them some input, and they were told they didn't know what they were talking about, they didn't know where they could come. So this is someone locally who said that to me. I tried to give some input because I went around to just kind of see if my passion was felt in other places, which I tried and I wasn't able to. I think what happens is this was laid out in a series of things. When we first sat down and there was options on the table, there was a variety of different options of like plan A, plan B, plan C. And there was not a lot of times where it was specific. So that equipment piece that you're talking about, I think that became specific to it later on and down the process. It wasn't there in the original design. So
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
yeah, but that was an option, right?
Just saying, it's in the original design.
So I can show you the selectmen meeting. I can talk to you about the number of times I've met with Joe. I met with John Madigan. I talked with the park commission. So I'm feeling, number one, that I was told the next step would be that I would get invited back to the selectmen to talk again about it before this got sent out, and after I talked to the park commission. So from my perspective, I was approached and I was waiting for that to happen. It's because, I don't want to just, if you're doing the work, and it didn't happen. So
Okay.
I'm here feeling your pain, and I understand where you're coming from. And it's often hard to engage people sometimes. And that's why I think this next piece is where we have that engagement. I would be happy to talk to people that are feeling that there's not anything being done, that there is interest in doing it, there is impetus for doing it, but I think the park committee was involved in trying to get the bigger issues addressed. And that was the bathhouse, that was the drainage, that was the new lighting, that was the new parking lot situation, that was the closure of the road. So there's been a lot of things that have gone on that the park has been doing all along the way. And so I think the delays were, there was money that ran out. There was promises that were made, like CMP bearing the line that never happened, wasn't able to happen. So all along, I think there was things that happened, but I think people can understand that process. I think the biggest part was just that pause between when it finished, and we've got 2 years now that happened before anything else went. So the swing set place got replaced. People were tired of the goose poop, and I think there's a huge effort under that, which I think has been a big improvement, but they're back. So it's gonna be an ongoing issue. So I hear you, and I'm just suggesting that a pause for a month worth of usage, maybe, and waiting until the spring and saying, all right, if we're still in that place, let's install it in the spring. That's all I'm saying. And meanwhile, maybe we can get a chance to get some information about people taking on an element, the total cost of it. You know, just people getting involved in it and willing to spend time and maintain it. Because overall, if you get townspeople in groups that come in and say your overall cost and maintenance is gonna go down significantly, and there's gonna be ownership. So in ownership,
Yeah, and I hear where you're coming from Kathy, and I thank you so much. Again, I do genuinely thank you for putting together the plan. I will stand on, my concern is that it's showing up at the 9th hour, which always happens to us when we make years and years worth of plans, which is why we're always backpedaling and always redoing something. But having said that, it is a majority board decision if we want to pause the already purchased piece of equipment. Do we have any idea what could happen if we don't use this, if we don't? What is the return policy on a piece of equipment that we just dropped how much money on?
We haven't paid for it yet, Madam Chair, but the equipment itself is just under $80,000. And as far as the return, we did vote to have me sign the purchase order. I wouldn't be comfortable answering that question until I talk to them.
you have any other questions for me or?
Any questions from the public? Joe,
How tall is this a little bit?
the piece,
Take a quick picture of it, how tall is this?
the piece that's been purchased?
Yeah,
Or that's,
how tall is
Joe,
it?
Joe said he didn't know, I asked that question.
Yeah, it's 8 or 10 feet. However, this, I haven't seen it yet. Patrick has the specifications, and I get that from him tomorrow. Answer that question. They just came together last week.
Something I just concerned about the view, some more stuff is blocking the view, look at the water. I don't know.
And the other concern I have is about the access, Joe, who is getting down from.
okay, sorry, we're not gonna have a cross conversation. Mark,
For David Haley's question, isn't it quite similar to the one that's in a pocket?
It is, man.
yes,
Yeah.
fairly similar to the one that's in a closet.
Right, so if you looked at that, Joe, that'll give you a rough idea of what the heck.
Wendy, sorry, I saw your hand.
Oh, that's, oh, yes, for the equipment that we haven't, that we purchased or we haven't sent the check out yet, there was considerable public input and you had meetings and it was a consensus in terms of that's what the people in the town were looking for as an addition to the park.
Yes, I mean, I think we can freely say yes. I mean, it went to the park commission. It was in, I mean, this is dated 2016,
Okay.
where the playground option is there. I mean, yes, I understand it was as an option, but that plan it's part of the 2016 Rangeley Lakeside Park proposed improvement plan. And so this has been, it's been presented numerous times.
And we have a location for it as well, where it's gonna go in the park.
Yes.
Right in front of the, adjacent to the swing set, right? And right in front of the handicap parking area?
Correct, Madam Chair. That's the current orientation is a little, if you're looking at the bathhouse, it's a little bit to the left. In the original discussions back in 15 and 16, it was more towards where the discontinued portion of Lake Street is. But we feel like that would interfere with the drainage, and there's a sewer manhole there too. So the location is based on all kinds of brainstorming.
Any further questions from Mr. Cindy?
Cindy Egan, 14 Allison Drive. Yeah, so throughout the process, partly to answer Wendy, your question, is we had a, earlier on, we had a wide group of parents that were involved with the Rangeley rec program. So it was a number of different age groups, and there was a panel. Okay, so we had the rec director or coordinator, and then there was a panel of parents, and so they got feedback. It went to the park commission had their feedback. They have 2 parents, 3 parents on the park commission as well, representing various ages. And as Ethna had pointed out, it has been a plan a long time coming, and it is, Joe, it is the same company in Aquasic that is manufacturing this piece of equipment as well. And a lot of planning had to be taken into consideration as to where to put this piece of equipment, and Joe has just touched on that. So it's been quite a process. So that's it.
And I just would say that that is a plan that's 8 years old. So when you look at playground equipment and how it's evolved and what has changed from the state recommendations now for playground equipment for both childcare centers and everything is more centered toward playscapes now. So there has been some more volume of information available and research that's been done. So I know that when they talk about outside schools and they talk about, like, sat down at one of the park committee meetings, and one she said was she has a child care, and she said, when I approached the state and said I need to purchase, what can I purchase for equipment, she said they actually sent me stuff that you're showing me right now. So there has been some changes. So 8 years, a lot of things change, and as we know, locations of equipment change, places of equipment change, all kinds of things. So I'm just putting that out there as something else.
Cindy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of consideration came into play when choosing this particular manufacturer because of Rangeley's freeze thaw, because of our climate, and because of what happened to our prior equipment with the, with the heaving and the thaw of the ground. This has a central core base which ensures integrity of the equipment, longevity, and not that it doesn't jeopardize, the equipment lasts longer, okay? You don't have 4 posts in the ground for, or 6 different posts in the ground for a particular structure. So this particular company had a manufacturing or an installation mechanism that really worked well for Rangeley.
And I would suggest that playscapes don't require those kinds of anchors because of what they have.
So sorry, we're gonna reel in the conversation just because we're kind of getting off track, or well, getting down the hour of the meeting.
Again, thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you so much, Kathy. I do appreciate it. If it is the pleasure of the board, we can see what we're kind of caught into. Otherwise, we can move forward with the previous position and the previous vote to move forward with the piece that we've planned to purchase.
If Joe wants to bring some information to us, if you want to make a call or whatever,
While I do think there may be a place for some of these pieces of equipment and perhaps a community effort in another area or to add to what we've already approved, I'm in favor of continuing with what we already started and perhaps adding some of this later on down the road with more information and more input.
So would you at least consider the location of it? Because it's gonna cause a physical and visual accessibility for people who are sitting in the handicap areas. So originally it was set to be off to the side, so it wouldn't be impacted. Now that new location has changed that. So
the only reason I would reconsider is with input from engineers, someone that's constructing this that would have an actual on paper reason that they calculated or they had seen before with credentials that would tell me the reason why.
So I would say that I am of the mindset that we are at the 9th hour of this whole process and that I am inclined to keep moving forward with what has already been agreed upon. Again, I would agree with Ethan that there are some spaces likely somewhere in the future that these make sense for us. And if we hear from an engineer that the placement of it is an accessibility issue, obviously we need to address it, but I have not heard that from an engineer or otherwise. So that I'm of the opinion to move forward with.
I am too. I think that it's you know, flavor of the community to, that's what they were looking for at that time. You already have an agreement on the table. I love some of the design elements in that. I would maybe, I know that the land slopes a little bit, so maybe take a line of vision perspective from somebody sitting in their car and see if there could be some adjustment to make sure that we're not impeding their visual of the water. That would be my only suggestion.
The visual and the physical too as well, because of the wood chips down there, it's gonna be hard for them to get through, so we might get the fence.
Any further comments or anything from the board, public? All right, let's move on. Thank you again, Kathy. I appreciate it. Okay, on to review the meeting minutes for September 18th.
Motion to approve the minutes of September 18th Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Ethan. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Any public to speak on a non-agenda item? Mr. Beauregard, you got 5 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a brief question. Mark Beauregard, 183 Pleasant Street. I was just curious about the status of that high resolution aerial photography we purchased a couple of years ago. I know they flew it one time and they didn't get the quality they wanted, and they were gonna fly it again this spring before the leaves came out, and I haven't heard any more about it. So.
They were, good question, Madam Chair. They were successful. So I had mentioned that to the board a while ago, but we do have those images. It's a huge file, and I haven't been able to figure out how to get it on the website. But I know that our engineer was able to use it. They used that imagery, I believe, in the faucet study. That was the base photograph for that. So we do have it.
But when it was presented, to purchase it, they said it would be available to the public, you know, that real estate people would be able to download it and look at stuff, and the general public could, you know, look at land and all, but we don't have that capability yet. There's no way to access it.
I haven't figured out how to get it on the website.
I was gonna say, if I understand what Joe said, not yet. A sizable file, huh?
I can work on that.
Well, what do other towns do? Do you know, Joe?
I really don't.
Okay.
I really don't. If somebody wants this information, FOIA's it, I can get them a thumb drive, or I can, you know, figure out how to get it to them. In the meantime, I can try to figure out how to get it on the website. So
Are the assessors using it?
I'd have to check with them.
Code enforcement? And planning?
I think the answer to that is no at this point.
Okay.
Currently, we aren't utilizing it to its ability because we haven't figured out how to make it accessible to be utilized to its ability.
Okay.
How's that for an answer?
We spent extra money on the higher resolution.
We got the upgrade.
We got the upgrade.
We got a resolution and the base model, so that it would be more useful. And so.
Madam Chair, I'll look
Thank
into
you, Joe. I appreciate
it. I
it.
haven't intentionally avoided it or kept it from anybody.
Sure.
I hadn't thought about it. in a very
Thank you
long time.
very much.
Thank you so much for bringing it up, Mark, though. That puts it back in our vision, and we will take care of it. We're going to slowly go through boards and committees and what they provided us, because I promised somebody we wouldn't get into consent items till we got back. All right, so we've been provided boards and committees meeting minutes for the Park Commission, the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee, the Planning Board. Oh, and the draft quarterly meeting.
I'd like to thank the board. Supplying.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Good
job, Jim.
Oh, don't say.
Ah, look at that. See, well done. Slowing down things. We're slowing down things before we get to the consent items. All right, moving on to the consent items of the evening. We have a liquor license renewal for Furbished Brew House and Eats.
Approve renewal of the liquor license for the Service Brew House and Eats.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Ethan. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. An event permit for the trunk or treat.
Approve the event permit for trunk or treat this year, town guard.
Second. Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. Any further discussion? Other than I think the children of the community really love this event, so thank you.
It's really grown in the year.
It has,
Boy, yeah.
it's amazing. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay. Community action grant, highway garage heat pumps.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess, this all came about, I guess, before I got on the board, but did we look into other options down there besides just the heat pumps, or why did we end up where we are with these guys?
So we originally were looking at replacing it with another oil fire burner. And the oil fire company suggested propane. They said propane is the way to go. We were looking at that, and then this grant came along, and we were going through the workshop publicly with the board. We were looking at items during budget season that happened to be right before that would qualify for this community action grant. One of them was efficient heating systems. So at that time, we thought it would be a good idea to explore this energy efficient grant to get some value out of that as opposed to just putting in another fossil fuel system. The price, as I recall, we had 35,000 plugged into the budget for the heating system. But that don't use that number because that was a couple of years old and that was not the propane number. So I know the 100,000 is a little scary, but the town's cost of this, if you take out the electrical upgrade, which we really should look at that upgrade anyway, if we don't do this, because when Andrew and I, he's an electrician also, when we looked at that, we picked out a few things that are not dangerous, but we probably should update them. So if you take out the $8,000, we're not that much more town share than the original 35,000 of the oil burner. I don't remember the propane number off the top of my head, but I believe it was more than 35,000.
Next question, so, okay, thanks. Go ahead.
All right, Joe, so you're looking for a motion?
Two, Madam Chair, actually, if the
accept
board is
the
inclined to accept the grant, and then the question that needs to be answered with the community action folks in the governor's office is, where would our money come from? They just want to know that we've got money to pay for the rest of the project. So the second would be to authorize expenditure from highway, which was discussed at that meeting, that budget meeting months ago. That would, if we found ourselves in this spot today, that would be my recommendation.
So make a motion to accept the grant for highway garage heat pumps.
A motion by Jim, second by Ethan. Any further questions about the grant? All those in favor? That is unanimous. And now you're looking for an amount to authorize the expenditure from highway reserve in the amount of $49,977.81.
I would make it up to 15.
No, I don't want to.
So moved up to 50,000. I'm not even saying it.
Motion by Jim,
Second.
second by Wendy. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Yeah. Monthly CDR renewal. Paperwork for that, right? I didn't see anything.
Just the notes.
Yeah, okay. Just the notes.
It's a recommendation to reinvest, so we got one set of proposals. Where I did last week, and another set today. So we're not ready to make a recommendation to you for those. It'll take us a couple weeks to process, and you a couple weeks to get it. So while we're processing all that, the bank called and said, one more month-long round of CR if you're interested. And I said, well, I'll recommend it to the board. But I do recommend it. We're getting 4.5%. So far, we've earned 55,612.43 in a matter of months. So probably tack another 10, 12 grand on that.
Make a motion to reinvest into that CR for another 30 days.
Motion by Jim, second by Ethan. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, that was a discussion.
Yes.
Hold that thought. Hold the paper.
Madam Chair, is there an initiation fee or a processing fee for each one of these? Like when you roll it over into the new one or no?
Not that I'm aware of.
I just wondered timeline wise, if we're not ready for, if it's longer than a month, then if there was a fee, I would suggest doing it for, as long as it's gonna take to get it to the next, more permanent investment.
I am not aware of a fee.
Okay.
Processing fee or otherwise.
Then I'll,
All in favor?
All right.
That is unanimous. Right, looks like we have received several pieces of correspondence. These are available on the website, correct?
They can be.
Okay.
But they can be if the board would like.
So it's public correspondence, they probably should be, yes, no?
They're in the
So everybody
selectmen
can get
packet.
it. What?
They're in the selectmen packet.
Oh, yes, they're in the packet. Yeah, they're not separately listed on the website, but they are, yes. available.
On the website,
Yes,
perfect. That's what I was after.
sorry.
That's okay. So we received correspondence from Lee Libby, Mary Reelwood, Randy Goodwin, Benjamin Weatherall, Luke Booker, Bethany Brett, James Eastlack, Rose Collins, Gawain Wood, and Aaron Bryhoff. Thank you so much, folks, for taking your time to submit that. It is available to read on the website. Right. Old business, law enforcement coverage. So I do have a statement really quick that I would just like to make sure I get on record. Given the nature of the topic. So we're in the infancy stages of having an open and honest conversation about the future of local police coverage and what that may look like. You can be sure it's a tough conversation to have, but our willingness to do it should in no way be interpreted to mean anyone on this board doesn't support law enforcement. In fact, it is because of our respect for those in those positions and members of our community and surrounding communities that we need to take a long, hard look at what ultimately will be the best for all of us. We must be willing to consider all avenues of discussion, regionalizing with neighboring plantations, partnering with and/or consolidating with county or other available coverage options, whatever those may be. We have to attempt to understand why we have had a fully funded department for the last 3 years at least, with an inability to fill the positions, and consider, while some of it may be financially driven, it is by no means the root of the lack of interest or ability to hire and maintain a full staff in that occupation. I point out we increased wages for the reserve officers and haven't been able to fill even those positions. So while I am not opposed to those conversations in the appropriate forum, this problem is larger and it's going to take some time to address properly. At least 12 small towns across the US have disbanded their police departments due to hiring difficulties. We do not want to find ourselves forced into making a decision like that. We need coverage in the area. There's a nationwide shortage, and according to PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, at the heart of this problem is the exodus from law enforcement. Officers' resignations were up 47% last year compared to 2019. And retirements are up 19%. America is in the midst of police officer shortages that many in law enforcement blame on twofold morale hit of 2020, the corona pandemic and criticism of police officers in general. Keeping all of this in mind and our history of often being able to recruit but struggling to retain, we have to be aware it takes a special candidate to come to our small community and want to be a community police officer. Those choosing law enforcement as a profession do so with the hope of advancement, canines, detectives, etc. They want to be able to move on. And those just aren't options in a small town department. I am challenging us all to take a deep look at what is the best for the community, dare I say the region, and how we achieve that outcome. Sorry, I know it was long, but it needed to be said. Okay, moving on. Anybody have any feedback or any suggestions on where we kind of start? We did have a nice conversation with Dallas Plantation at the last quarterly meeting. It was very productive. They are interested in regional coverage. If we could get some feedback from a couple of other plantations, that would be nice. And we'll see where that, but it's an avenue that we are absolutely approaching. Does anyone feel like there's some information we can request, what direction we need to go? I just don't want this to sit stagnant. We need to do something for our current department and for our community to get this taken care of. And however we do that is that's just my goal. If we can take care of this for everybody involved. The two guys who are pulling the department right now are probably exhausted.
So I know we'd asked Joe for some information. I don't know if you got us some answers.
Madam Chair, I do have some follow-up information from what we met in executive session. There was
I
a
said
component.
Joe, I'm sorry, I meant the chief, sorry. I think I said Joe, yeah.
We
I meant
did.
the chief.
But I have that information that Jim's referring to, probably more pertinent for an executive session.
Right. Any discussion regarding how it affects negotiations will not happen at this, but anything outside of that can happen at this level and should, so that people know what direction we're going and so that they have a good feel that we are addressing it, we are trying to take care of it, we are trying to tackle it. Yes.
Just a question, so at the quarterly meeting, just Dallas Plantation and the town of Rangeley was present, and I think the quarterly meeting, I use quarterly loosely because it usually doesn't happen every 3 months, but were the other two plantations absent as well? I wasn't able to attend, but I know, okay, so
The only groups in attendance were us and Dallas Plantation.
So I know that, for instance, with the Carrabassett Police Department, you know, Sugarloaf is heavily involved, so I mean, so the Saddleback have, I guess that there may be one avenue. I just wouldn't count on them being made aware of discussions like you all have just had. If there is a need. They're being very proactive with like the fire rescue component, and I don't know if they think that police coverage would be included in with that. I think there might be some education involved. I wouldn't want them to assume that, you know, one call does it all and there goes Jared.
No,
So that was.
Yep.
I'm really, yeah.
we did approach that conversation, especially given that the mountain has kind of set itself up as its own entity, and how we can approach them on, okay, if you're an entity, what it would look like if you regionalize both services with us. So it was a brief, like I said, infancy. We're trying to just kind of hit a whole bunch of holes into something and see where it catches.
Right, right. Well, I mean, any and all information is just a good place to start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that, I think it was Chief French mentioned that Thomaston is doing the firemen's rotation schedule. I think input from a municipality that has had that or is experiencing that schedule might benefit us, you know, as well as other, you know, municipalities that have, you know, made the decision to, you know, amalgamate their police department with support from out of the region, because they know what happened. They know how it impacted their community, and, you know, if someone's already walked down that road, I think it would be really helpful for us to hear it.
Is okay. So I've been in contact with the chief in Thomaston earlier in this, when I brought this idea to the chief, and he was he's a very energetic guy. He was down to one guy, and he looked at, this came from out west in Washington State, I can't, Kittitas, I believe, PD. They recognize they're a small town like us, they needed to think outside the box. And so they've been doing it, and then he took the model from them, but he was more than happy to drive up here, or I'm sure Zoom or something, and share his experiences. But they went from a one-man PD to, I think, 7, they're growing to 10. But they're having great success. They went from not getting any applicants to they now have a waiting list to get into there, so.
Perfect. If we can make that contact.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from him, whether it be by Zoom or in the space would be.
Any and all
Yeah.
that.
Mark,
You mentioned regional coverage.
Mhm.
Right now, the present regional coverage is the Franklin County Sheriff's, I guess. And would it make sense to reach out to them and see what their vision is for the area as well, you know? what
oh,
they-
absolutely. I mean, it's something that we need to consider how each of these steps would impact us. I think first and foremost, the thought process of this group was to regionalize us. And however we can manage that is what we think is best going to give the best impact for the region. I mean, for the surrounding plantations and everything. Therein lies if we choose other measures and we go to county, or the plantations decide to get on board with us, we're still gonna have to pay county tax. That's never going away. County tax is not, there will be an additional cost to get designated officers here. So it's a matter of weighing which of these costs makes more sense for the region.
And, you know, I guess the state police presence in
They're-
rural towns has been dissipating on a steady basis. They're just concentrating on the turnpike now, I guess, mostly.
Yes,
Uh,
essentially they are traffic control.
Yeah, so,
I told myself, I didn't mean it badly.
but at the same
Sorry,
time, would
if
you
there's a
reach
state
out
trooper
just
listening.
to get a formal statement from them so that, you know, we had a record of?
If we can, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It won't hurt anything to. One second, just. a
No,
second.
no, that's fine.
You
Keep
go.
it up.
No, you
Oh,
go.
I go.
You're a
Okay.
board
No,
member, you
that's
have.
fine.
Thank you, Mike.
Rangeley Room, but I have heard that county wants to even get rid of the plantations because they're down so many people, so maybe we could reach out to them and kind of get some input from them as what their thought process is. So at least we know the truth.
Yeah, they are currently down 3.
Yeah.
Because they're running into, I mean, the problem is we've hit a perfect storm for this occupation. It saddens me to see it. But we've had so many people leave it, and there's just not enough interest from younger people who want to get into the field. And I mean, it's gotta be one of the most thankless positions on the planet, so would you wanna?
And that's what I was trying to ask you, Jim, pretty much the same thing you
Yeah.
did, just not as eloquent.
Well, thank you.
Jared.
So I just want to add follow-up with Jim. So I've had conversations with the deputies, and I think the chief deputy told the chief, they're looking to get rid of the plantations. They want us to take over.
Yeah.
And on a second thing, I think they're in year 2 of their contract. They just got a 24% raise their last contract. They called me saying, because this has gotten out. They know that we're brainstorming ideas what we do to be more competitive. And they're waiting to see what we're doing because they're renegotiating a couple things on theirs, and they're looking to renegotiate wages than one up us. And when I mentioned this to the chief, he's got another call. So everybody's watching what we're doing, and it's just become a game of cherry picking other people from upping. And I think the only thing that, you know, and I'm in support of this schedule because I think that's gonna be the one thing that's gonna differentiate us from somebody else. So, thank you.
So in all of my research, I came across a lovely article that gives us ideas and strategies to help improve police officer recruitment, hiring, and retention. There's an 11-step plan that I would like to give everybody copies of and see what we can do to hit this plan. They cover things like develop a recruitment plan, first and foremost. Host pre-academy programs for teens and college students. Practice community policing, which is what we want. Ask your officers to invest themselves in recruiting for your department. Update your marketing materials and outreach strategies. Ensure background checks and department requirements align with actual department needs. Sit down with your officers. Get your officers out into the community. Stay competitive. Improve communication from top down and bottom up, and prioritize training. It's an 11-step program that was put together by folks who work with PERF, which is the Police Executive Research Forum.
That's great.
Perfect, okay. So I'm gonna give you copies of this. If you wanna, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it, and then if we can give it to, if you wouldn't mind passing it on to the chief too, so maybe he can help us.
Sure.
Tell us what direction we can take all of this. Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I can see that you've done a lot of work and you're thinking outside the box, and you guys are coming together to support us. And I truly appreciate it. I see you've done a lot of work. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate our law enforcement. We really do. And I think when we start these conversations, everybody panics and think we don't, but we do. We need law enforcement coverage in the area, and we know it. We just gotta figure out how best to do it. Joe?
So how much lower is the pay than the state police and the county? I mean, ballpark, I mean,
Pay conversations will not be had in public. Sorry. Thank you, Joe.
I don't care.
It's a pocket law conversation between you and Jared.
I'm so sorry.
Pretty simple to solve. Pretty simple problem to solve.
It's not, Joe. It's not. And if you think that it's only by that, then you didn't hear a single thing I said, but thank you for your
Yeah,
input.
okay.
All right, so the new business. Town Park Playground was already taken care of. Comprehensive Plan Review Committee bylaws. So it looks like this group got together and wanted to kind of separate the duties of, which is what I thought was already in place, so I thought they were two different committees. So Wendy, please, would you like to give us some feedback?
Sure, I'd be happy to, thank you. At our last meeting, we sat down and we talked about it because there was discrepancy in one of the actionable items for implementation on the 2012 comp plan. Everyone agrees that's read it, that it's poorly written because it's a directive, which it shouldn't be. It should be more like you should consider this. So to be compliant with the flavor of the comp plan and to I guess institute more of a focused mission for our board, which has been very active. We decided to ixnay the implementation. So instead of crick, it's gonna be but what we're doing is we're going to be reviewing and doing the legwork and doing the lifting to get the update up to speed with the assistance of our planner that we're hiring, and it just seemed to clean this up a little bit. And if you're okay with it, it's the same exact bylaws pretty much except for the name change, and then in areas where, in section 2, under duties and powers, we added review comprehensive plan and make recommendations for changes, and ixnayed the implementation component of what was previously there.
Okay. Now, these are your bylaws, but you're a yeah, you see my wheels spinning.
I would consider these to be a policy and treat it as a first reading of the policy.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the first reading of the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee bylaws?
So moved.
Oh,
Second.
yay! Motion by Ethan, second by Jim. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay. That's not my papers here.
Madam Chairman, so is this different than what is, so Selectman Case mentioned that there was a requirement written within the comprehensive plan, remember that being brought up the last time, so how does this fit into that? Is this the exact requirement as it's laid out in the comprehensive plan?
In the comprehensive plan, at the very end of it, in the actionable steps, I think there's only 3 or 4 items that reference implementation. And one of them named CRIC and then said that it should have components on the board that would have participation from someone on the planning board, someone, and I can't remember exactly the mix up of the economic development board, obviously a board of selectmen, business people and things like that. Our feeling was the board has been stagnant for a long time and it's just newly got some energy and we're at full capacity. And to have not that everybody's welcome and it's a great meeting to go to, but to expand the board to, it would be almost 9 members, I believe, would make the conversation slow right down and we'd probably never have a quorum because of the commitments from some of the other board members. So we were concerned we wouldn't be able to move ahead. So we thought renaming our group would extract us from the need to be compliant with what's actually written as a directive in the back of the comp plan.
But that's what was approved,
Exactly, but this is a new committee.
to sidestep what was voted and approved in the comprehensive plan by the citizens of the town of Rangeley. So it's kind of backhanded.
Well,
Is one of the
we were
camps.
trying to brainstorm and come up with things and I can't remember, Chair, I believe, said that this might be the best option. And our feeling was that it was poor wording in the comprehensive plan to give a
Doesn't matter.
directive.
It's in the comprehensive plan. It was approved by the citizens of the town of Rangeley with citizen input. I'm just shocked. There's a directive, comprehensive plan, for whatever reason. I wasn't here. I didn't participate, but for,
Well, the directive's still there and that committee hasn't been active and isn't active currently.
I have nothing more to say. I just think it's,
Yeah, and I thank you so much for your feedback, Cindy. I appreciate your position on it. I will say that I was of the mindset that the plan implemented a particular committee, but I also thought they were 2 separate committees.
Right. but it doesn't state, sorry, Madam Chair. It doesn't.
I thought they were 2 separate committees all along. I don't see any issue with making a working committee to get this document in front of the implementation committee for the directive of the board. So, I mean, we just need to work on filling the implementation committee so that we meet with the directive of that board, but this board can do all of this extra legwork. When you add, let's be honest, it's tough to get 5 people to agree on something and to communicate something well enough so that it can come to what it needs to in a document. When you add too many people to the discussion, to the review part of any process, it can be difficult to get the document off the ground and get moving into the review process. I know that one of the members was standing firm on their belief that if there were too many people on the committee, it would sit stagnant. There would be other people who would back off. There would be people who would get off the committee. That was a serious concern. So I'm not opposed to having this review committee in place as long as there is intent to have the comprehensive plan implementation committee present its face at some point.
It doesn't sound like anything's been really talked or thought out. It's just a suggestion from this group and no mention of how to get the community involved like they were with this comprehensive plan. So,
We're planning on doing charrettes, we're planning on doing working meetings. We're planning on reaching out to the community, we're doing a survey, we're gonna have it online, we're gonna have it in paper. We were waiting to get a commitment from the planner, and now that we've made the selection, we're gonna sit down and have an organizational meeting with her. And as the actual steps are directed at particular departments, like in the previous plan, we will be meeting directly with the planning board, we'll meet directly with the ordinance committee directly with,
Like you're just the review committee. You're not the implement, you're not the.
we have to create an update of the plan. That's our work. It's out of date.
Work's getting done. I mean, at the end of the day, work's getting done.
Yeah, I mean-
Anybody sidestepping it.
No, and I mean, we can argue positions all we want, but the work is getting done and is being reviewed. It still has to go through a process to get updated. That's written in how you handle your comprehensive plans. There is still a process in how it gets updated. So regardless of who's doing the review process and spearheading the review process and making sure that every line is meticulously reviewed in this plan, I don't care, as long as there is a plan that goes in front of the implementation committee and that process continues whatever way it's supposed to, as written out by, you know, if it's state statute or what it is that drives these comprehensive plans.
Mhm.
As long as we follow what's in state statute, when it comes to implementing the changes that are being reviewed and talked about, those meetings are open to public like any other meeting that's held. Yes,
So, will this review identify alternative solutions that would be forwarded to the implementation committee, or will it be just one idea that they agree on? You know, what will the implementation committee get from the review committee? Will it be, you know, several options or alternatives, or just whatever those
I
five
know
people
it's asking.
want to move forward?
Thank you, Mark, for the question, and Madam Chair. How the terminology or how the phraseology is going to work in a comprehensive plan, the committee won't do any of the work in terms of implementation. What they'll do, it would say something like, the ordinance committee of Rangeley should consider allowing auxiliary apartments or something like that. And then the work is up to the ordinance committee to consider that. They'll have to go to public meeting, they'll have to create the ordinance, they'll have to adjust an ordinance that might have something like that in there. Then it will come to the Board of Selectmen for final approval and then go to the warrant at the end of the day. So the terminology is supposed to be focused in a way where you pose something that's going to possibly solve a problem, and the committee or board does the actual work. And sometimes when it's posed that way, that particular committee might say, well, that was a great idea 5 years ago, but that we can't do that. For some reason, it doesn't work. Or the public says, I have zero interest in that at public meeting. Did I answer your question?
Where's the part with the implementation committee that comes up?
Normally, towns don't have a comp plan implementation committee. That work is usually done by a planning board or by the council or the selectmen. A lot of comprehensive plan committees dissolve after the plan is finished.
So you intend to submit your review comments directly to the planning board, directly to the ordinance committee, those?
We'll get a finished, once we get input from everybody, we'll have a finished document for review.
They're not seated members on the committee, those that were named in the comprehensive plan, so their input comes after.
The public has the voice at these meetings. The comprehensive plan is a wide-ranging visionary document that takes into consideration the community's appetite for different areas of focus: economy, land use policy, all that stuff.
and it's a visionary document that this makeup of the last, I don't know how many boards, how long has it been in place? 12 years?
Yeah.
It's a visionary document that we let stale, that we let come to a stalemate. So there's somebody currently actively working on getting this document moving forward. and being our future document that will not need this huge review, because we'll keep a pulse on, it's an ever change, it's a live document. Or that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Is your live document, your vision of your community and how they want to see you move forward. So the plan is for in the future, not to let this document just sit on a shelf and not be touched for 12 years. Any further discussion on that? Okay. Have we moved on to town manager report? We have operations updates. That's at the second meeting. Thank you so much, Joe. Calendar. Do we have anything on the calendar? Other than our next meeting?
No, other than the transfer station is no longer open on Sundays.
That's right. All right, other business, monthly financials were provided. We all should have those. Poland Springs withdrawal totals for August of 2023. We do have that in our packet. In case anybody's interested, for the entire month of August, Poland Spring water utilization from White Cedar Spring for bottling was a really big number.
A lot of markets.
4,242,125 gallons. Did I put that comment in the right place? I didn't. The total for the year.
Is that spring in Rangeley or is it in Dallas?
Lower Dallas.
Yeah.
Lower Dallas. Okay. Select board communication, nothing in addition to the communication that was already shared on the agenda earlier. We do not have an executive session planned for this evening, correct, Joe?
That's correct.
Guess what time it is, folks? I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn unless there's anything else.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Wendy. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you so much, folks, for participating this evening.